Welcome to On the Issues. I'm Vice Mayor Jim Waring, and joining me today is Arizona Corporation Commissioner Brenda Burns. Commissioner Burns, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here. Absolutely. We have not had a corporation commissioner on before, and it's an office that's always statewide office, always flown a little bit below the radar. So we're hoping that maybe you could clear up any misconceptions people have about what they're voting for. It's been much discussed this election cycle.
Oh, so, it has. Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the goals that I had when I was elected 4 years ago to this office was to make it more visible to people, make them understand, or at least try to reach out and let people understand how important the commission is to their daily lives, to the daily bills that they get in the mail and so on, and what exactly we do. But what happens a lot of times when you start explaining it is people's eyes sort of start glazing over, so we'll try not to let that happen. And sometimes when I go out speaking, I actually hand out cards that say TMI, too much information, so they can hold them up and I can switch to a different subject.
Well, I know she's exaggerating because Brenda and I have known each other for a long time. If anybody can make this understandable, it's you.
Okay,
so,
well, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
We'll put this to the test.
Yeah,
but,
they're a very important commission. I'm happy to tell you about it. I mean, we are part of the Constitution, the Arizona Corporation Commission. We were put in the Constitution initially because of the understanding that when you have corporations that provide a service that is vital to life, it would be important to have someone regulate them because they're a monopoly. And so people can't change their providers a lot of times. But maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself there, I want to tell you more broadly what we do first. We are a 5-member commission. All of our commissioners are elected.
Which is different than other states,
which
correct?
Is.
Yeah.
There's, I believe, 13 states that elect their commissioners, and only about 7 states that have the commission actually in the Constitution. So we are different, and people who are from other states who might be watching this might get a little better clue as to what we do if I say that we're kind of like a public utilities commission. In a lot of states, that's what they're called.
I think they're railroad commissions, aren't there, in other places?
They're railroad, they're utility commissions and so on. And we have certain powers and responsibilities under the Constitution, and the legislature cannot take away any of our powers, but they can add powers. So we're not part of the legislative branch, we're not part of the executive or the judicial, we're kind of our own little entity. And
I've always heard it called the fourth branch of government.
Which, you know, I don't flow with that a lot because I'm a real constitutionalist. But the fact is we are unique and we do have our sort of separate and distinct responsibilities. So we have divisions, part of which have been added by the legislature, part of which are constitutional. For instance, you mentioned railroads. We have a safety division. There's a railroad and pipeline safety. That's really something the federal government gave to the state to do some monitoring on, and then that was put in by the state legislature, I guess, and the governor, into the Corporation Commission. We also have securities. Now, securities is a really big division. And critically important. And now there's the SEC, and they regulate securities, but we have a role. Securities have to be registered here in a certain way, and they have to abide by the rules and regulations here. And mostly we're trying to be some sort of a stopgap for any civil complaints against anyone who may not be registered or may be registered and doing a poor job. If they're criminally prosecuted, that would be the Attorney General, and we work with them often. But mainly we just want to make sure that Arizona residents understand what to look for when they're looking at making a financial investment. And we have things like this booklet, What Every Investor Should Know. You can actually get it online, the information, or you can grab this booklet from the Securities Division. Basically, it comes to, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and we've heard that everywhere. But you know, in Arizona, we have so many retirees, and retirees are often where some of these predators like to attack. So we feel like we have a big population here that needs to know this issue, and the Securities Division does a tremendous job. Overall, before I go to the other 2 divisions, I want to tell you we've got about 300 FTEs, full-time equivalent employees.
I didn't even realize it was that big myself. Yeah, I was going to ask.
And we are in, I think, 3 different buildings. On the Capitol Mall somewhere. We have a budget of about $28.5 million, and we generate quite a bit of money. So we're basically a donor to the general fund. We give more to the general fund than we actually get back in our budget. So that's another thing the legislature does with us. They actually, write our budget. The other 2 divisions would be the Corporations Division, as with the name Arizona Corporation Commission. That's obviously what we are. And that's where you go to file if you want to begin a corporation or You need to make annual filings, make sure a name is available, and change your manager or things like that. And the commissioners themselves don't interact a lot with the corporations division, but one of our interests are making sure that it's running smoothly. So we wouldn't want a corporation to have to wait in line to be able to start business in the state of Arizona just because of a filing issue. So those are the kind of things we look at there. But one person from the corporations division once described themselves as a big file drawer. So they are a little more than that, but there is a lot of paperwork that goes through there. And then the final division, which we probably will spend the most of the time talking about, and where the commissioners do spend most of their time, is the utilities division. And so the rates that everyone gets every month in their water bills, or their electric bills, their gas bills, those are set by the commission. And be happy to tell you more about that.
Well, can you talk a little bit about how that process works? Because obviously you said, kind of like school boards, or for that matter, city councils, I've always said that the elected representatives that are closest to the people tend to impact you the most. But people tend to think about, as you know from your experience both in the state legislature and in this office, people tend to think about what's going on in Washington when they think politics.
Right.
And sometimes this slides below the radar, but actually your utility bills, your water bills, that impacts the average citizen more than a lot of things that probably happen in Washington. So maybe talk a little bit about how can folks impact you? Do they call your office? You know, how do rate increases come about? Can you just kind of walk us through that process?
That's a perfect question, and one that I would like for people to know a lot more about. When a company, a water, electric, whatever, say APS, wants a rate increase, they would file an application for that. And there's a series of time periods that they go through and so on. But they file an application with the commission, and we have to make sure they've got all the information there that we need. But basically... Can
I stop you there? Can they do this every day, every month? Is there a prescribed limit on how often they can ask for a rate increase?
There isn't really, but there's a practical thing. But I can tell you there are companies that come in for rate cases that haven't been there in 20 years or 10 years or something. So obviously that might be a small water company that's been sort of trudging along or something. And then at times we have stay out periods where they have a rate case and we say, no, you can't file another one for 3 years or longer. Or sometimes we say we'll be doing something with a company and we'll say, you know, we need to look more closely at your rates and we want you to file next year. So it can go either way. But they'll give their reasons, everything that they need. We'll look at their what we call a test year and look at their expenses.
So they have to make their case.
They have to make their case. Perhaps they've had to put in more infrastructure. Perhaps there's been a lot of inflation in some areas that are heavy. But it's interesting. You mentioned federal laws or state laws for that matter. That can impact your bill as well. Trying to think how many years ago it was, probably 10 or more years ago, maybe a dozen years ago, when, for instance, the arsenic standard was changed. It used to be 50 parts per billion were allowed. That changed to 10 parts per billion. That's basically an overnight change. So you all of a sudden had some water companies out of compliance.
Yeah, here it was really an issue.
It's been an issue, yeah. So a lot of water companies out of compliance. Sometimes they can blend and make it work, but a lot of times they have to put in arsenic treatment plants. Well, guess who pays for that? The consumer, the ratepayer pays for that. Eventually, the company makes the investment, and then they have to come in and show prudency, show that they needed it, and then it goes in what we call their rate base, and then they get a return on that. So it's pretty complex, but a lot of the decisions, like I say, that are made, you might like the new arsenic standard, or you might not like the arsenic standard. I just think it's important that people know that it ends up on their bill. Now, as the rate case goes along, and it is a rate case, it goes in front of an administrative law judge. So it actually we become like judges in that case. We are letting the ALJ go through and do their hearing. The ALJ will eventually give us what they call a recommended opinion and order. And they will have, tons of filings. I mean, we can have a case with boxes full of documents, and then they sort of synthesize it, and we can go back to any of the documents we want and look at it. We can also sit in the hearings if we choose to and ask questions ourselves. But eventually that recommended opinion and order comes out, and then we take it and we either accept it or change it, reject it, whatever we choose to do. But here's a really important piece to know, and that is that a lot of times, especially in some of the bigger rate cases with, say, APS or some of the bigger water companies, there is an attempt at what's called a settlement agreement. Now, you and I are from the legislature. We used to be in the legislature. And a settlement agreement means, you know, I can sit down and I can even help with that, right, in the legislature and say, I want to get all the parties to the table. I want all sides. Everybody that I know is affected, I want them at the table. Well, in a settlement agreement, it doesn't really work that way. People decide if they want to be an intervener. To be in the settlement agreement, they apply to be an intervener. And the commissioners don't get to sit in those negotiations at all. As a matter of fact, we cannot know what went on in those negotiations.
So who moderates?
Well, staff is there. Okay. Staff typically is moderator. They try to bring people together as long as they think it's a reasonable direction. If they think they're beyond reason, then the negotiations end. But it can include many people, or it can include just a few people. And that, to me, when the case ultimately, when the ALJ gives us the recommendation, one of the things to me when I look at a settlement agreement is who all was involved. Was the consumer represented enough, or was it just people who sort of get something out of it? And so that's a big piece. So I'm always encouraging homeowners associations or any big group, even individuals or business associations, to try and get in and protect themselves.
So individuals can weigh in to you on these cases?
Well, not to me, because I can't be.
Not to you personally, okay.
Well, they can send an email or they can send a letter, but it has to be docketed, because since I sit like a judge, I cannot see anything that not everyone sees. Everyone has to be able to see all of the items that are filed in there. But anyone who wants to be an intervener can apply to the commission, and likely they will be accepted. Rarely have I ever seen anyone rejected, and they can go sit in on all of those meetings. They have to do the filings, and it's kind of long and laborious, but I think well worth it in the end if they can sit through it. And the settlement agreement means so much more to me, and I think the other commissioners, when more people like that are participating. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how this process works, because I don't think it's well known out in the public. Once in a while, one of these bubbles up in the newspaper, on the business page,
right,
traditionally. But I don't think most people understand exactly how it gets to their bill and how it impacts them.
Exactly.
So I'm glad we have you here to explain it, which is exactly the purpose of having you on the show.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And I guess another thing I'd like to say is when I'm out and about speaking, people might ask me about a particular rate case that's going on, and I can't talk about it. I can maybe tell them what the process is. I can tell them when we believe we're going to have it before the commissioners, but I cannot talk to them about any thoughts I have about it, nor can I really listen to what their thoughts are about it individually like that. It needs to be docketed so that all the commissioners and all the parties can see.
But they can weigh in the way you explained before.
Absolutely, yeah. and I encourage them to, absolutely.
Do a lot of people weigh in? Do you hear from a lot of folks?
It just depends. Sometimes we get hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters. Depends on how publicized it is, how many people it's going to affect. And as a matter of fact, we have one coming up soon where we're doing public comment sessions. And that it would be, we can do a public comment sessions essentially inviting everyone who has an interest to come in and weigh in on it and give us their opinion, or we can actually also go to locations when a location that's affected is far away from us. It's difficult to, I mean, people can't all come in and give us their opinions so easily. It's a long drive. So we go to them, and we have, before this year is out, we have 3 more public comment sessions where we will go to their sites and listen to them.
Is that very typical? Because I knew you guys traveled, and I knew you had sort of road shows, if you will. But I mean, is that something you're doing every month, or just depends?
It varies. Like I say, we will have 3 in December, and sometimes we'll go a month or 2 with none. And it just depends on what cases are going on. But it's very important for people to make their case. I take good notes, and then when I come back and as the case is moving forward, I actually put some of the questions forward and make sure that we're answering the questions where people have brought their concerns to us.
I know we've talked about this, but I guess it's an issue that's been in the paper here again recently. People may have seen it. The open meeting laws as they apply to the Corporation Commission. Used to be, I think up until into the 2000s, there was only 3 commissioners, so basically they couldn't ride elevators together because of the fear that they would discuss some pressing case in the elevator. I know that was always kind of a joke around the Capitol, that they would have to split up and take different means of transportation to upper floors. But now you have 5 members, but it's still an issue. I know Commissioner Burns, has been talking about that a little bit.
Right. Well, obviously you want the public.
Do you think it impedes the work? I mean,
It can impede to a degree, and one thing that I've said is maybe we need to sort of separate out the things where we do have issues. But I know in the legislature, for instance, used to have closed caucuses, and eventually the caucuses were open, but you still chose to have closed caucuses. Well, not you, but you know, a while back the legislature chose to still have closed caucuses if you're talking about, say, administrative issues, staff issues, or you know,
personnel stuff, everything
personnel type thing. We have nothing. The only time we close our doors is if we're talking to our attorney, and that has to stay on legal advice. We can't, you know, veer off into anything else. But for instance, the other day we had people calling who wanted us to schedule a public comment session somewhere. Well, we had to call a special open meeting. We call it a staff meeting, and you have to notice it just so that 5 commissioners could talk, or more than 2 commissioners could talk about whether we wanted to have this public comment
and whether
session.
you were available and your schedules
Well,
worked.
someone else takes care of that by talking to the office about availability, but the vote on whether to have it, we had to actually have a vote, and we had to, you know, wait and have the staff meeting. And we still do. There could be 2 commissioners talking and walk down the hallway, and another one comes up, and whoops, so one of us will go the other direction. So, you know, it sort of depends on what it is. Again, if it's a policy issue, and at the legislature, we were used to dealing with policy issues, and you know, we could talk to each other and kind of work out some snags, and then still, of course, talk about it publicly. But here we don't, on any issue, talk more than 2 commissioners. If you were a commissioner, I spoke with you, I could not then the next day go talk to another commissioner about that issue. I am now locked in with that first commissioner on that issue. So it's got its pros and cons, but there are times when it, you know, probably could be helpful if we could talk a little more, but the public also has to be comfortable with whatever it is. And I know you have open meeting.
We have open
meeting,
but we have more members. We have 9 members, so you can have a little bit more discussion without violating the laws.
Right.
I know I've been following it a little bit because there's been a couple articles here recently in the paper about potential changes. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but certainly there's been some discussion about that.
Well, yeah, they decided to just table it until the new commissioners come on and let them sort of get a little more comfortable with how we do things, and see if there is any interest, I think, in the then commission to figure that out. But between that and the ex parte rules, I'm, you know, constantly trying to figure out who I can speak to, if anyone, about what. And so that does take some of my time, because I try to do the overabundance of caution.
Well, and I should have mentioned it earlier, you are retiring at the end of this term. So after a long public career, you were in the legislature starting in the 80s. And moved on to the Corporation Commission, but you served, I think, 2 terms as the Senate President in the late 90s. And so I'm just curious, what kind of changes have you seen over a relatively long period of time?
Well, you have to remember that when I ran for the state legislature, it was in 1986, .com didn't exist. So, so there you go.
Things have changed.
There's a huge, huge gulf there between the way it was and the way it is now. The ability to, just the ability to get anything done when you're, you know, not present talking to someone by being, you know, by virtue of the email. Certainly, you know, television. I mean, obviously we did have television then.
We did have. I remember.
But there's more, you know, the YouTubes and the Facebooks and all of those things.
There's more politics on TV, certainly, just because there's more channels. I don't know if more people are watching, but there's more stuff.
I mean, you know, you've got programs that are specifically dedicated to that. So it is different, and any issue can be exploded. Misinformation can get out as well. Someone gets a hold of things and twists the way it's going to be phrased, and the soundbite goes one way. And
well, the information gets disseminated so fast, I'm sure. It used to be a bit letter, or I suppose newspaper, maybe a little bit of network television. That's really all there was.
That's
now
right.
You got the internet spreading things like wildfire.
That's right.
Do you hear from more folks than you heard from back then when you first started?
Because of email.
Yeah, because it's so much easier.
It's amazing how few letters we get. And even with emails.
I always encourage people to send an email. Don't fax. Those always seem to disappear. And almost nobody writes a letter now.
That doesn't. Yeah. And we do get a lot, by the way, of, you talk about it being easy. I mean, emailing is easy. And then if someone does a mass email and wants everybody to sort of sign it, so you get the same email, you know, 1,000 times with just a name on it. And that's fine if people want to show the level of support and how many people this organization has weighing in on something. But a personally written, even email, whether it's a letter or an email, I think that shows why this issue affects me personally, to me carries a great deal of weight when someone really sits and thinks through it and says, you know, here's a situation my husband and I or my wife and I are in, or something. That means a lot.
No, you and I are of the same mind. I've always told people, just this, it could be just a couple sentences, but just a dear Jim, you know, here's
Right.
what the issue is, here's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your thoughts if you want to hear back from me, and just sign it. And that's usually it.
Well, it's interesting. The legislature, I'm sorry, I just was thinking about comparisons too of the legislature. You have broad, I mean, so many issues. I mean, I learned things
Hammered
I never
with
knew
emails,
existed.
hundreds of emails a day.
So,
yep.
and it could be about, you know, just tons
Anything.
of different, I mean, the things I learned in the legislature, like I say, that I didn't even know existed, and anything that seems small or you didn't know existed before is still huge to some people.
Yeah,
you
some
know,
people it's
if
extremely
it's
important.
their lives. But at the commission, you have fewer issues, but you go very deep in every one of them. So we get down to minutia quite a bit there. To us, it's not minutia, it's critical in the decisions that we make. But in the legislature, while you do have that, every legislator cannot go really deep into every issue.
I've tried to
just
explain to
can't do
people
it.
what's it like.
Right.
It's like being in college, but instead of taking 15 hours, you're taking 50 or something,
Right.
and every class is 8 hours a day. It was sort of an amazing experience.
That's right, yeah.
But, so you have a case, getting back to the Corporation Commission, you know, you said you have, you know, small water companies, you also have APS. So what would the public, so APS wants to raise rates, and it's going to affect the whole state. Do you hear from thousands of people about that?
Well, first of all, APS doesn't serve the whole state,
Okay,
so it'll affect their entire service territory.
Their service territory,
and,
sure.
and this, by the way, gives me an opportunity too. I didn't want to forget to say, some people think that we regulate SRP.
Right.
We do not.
I'm glad you said that, because that was something I knew, but you're right.
And of course, the
Folks
city of
watching right
Phoenix,
now.
you have your water and
Right.
sewer. So we don't regulate municipalities. We regulate small water companies.
Do you have the percentages of who serves what?
How many? No, but we have a few hundred water companies that we
Right.
regulate. How many municipalities there are, or how many districts there are in that case, I can't
So you have
count
the
those.
potential for
But,
hundreds of cases, though.
oh yes,
out there,
of
yeah.
course, sure, and
Because the ones
but-
that bubble up in the paper are, of course, the bigger ones that affect,
Right,
you know.
right, and you were
the
talking
bulk
about
of the state.
APS, and I'm sorry, your question was, APS comes in, it's going to affect so many people.
I mean, I would assume that would be the biggest case.
That
I was
would
just
be one of the,
speculating, I
that
would
would be
think, yeah.
absolutely, yeah. And of course, we will hear from a lot of people about how it will affect them. And, you know, there are certain, like I say, there are certain things that could end up making us do a rate increase or not. Last time we didn't actually increase rates, the last time we had an APS rate case. But whether there's federal laws or state laws or EPA items that affect rates, or whether it's the need for infrastructure or just inflation, it's just a number of things that we look at. But certainly EPA, and I have to say, you know, the war on coal is costing people. If they go after, you know, other things that will cost people, and the move toward renewables, if we want to get into policy issues, that's a big change. This is a big change big change era, I call it, because not only are we changing some of our energy portfolio about where the source of energy comes from, but it's a different kind of energy. For instance, solar is intermittent. It produces when the sun shines. So we have a situation where electricity has to be generated, distributed, and consumed almost simultaneously. So what do you do with intermittent energy, which all of a sudden the sun's out, boom, you've got lots of sun, now a cloud cover comes over, or the night comes, or something unexpected happens. All of a sudden you've got to put more energy onto the grid, and then when there's an overabundance, you've got to release it somewhere so that you don't end up with blackouts. And honestly, I'll tell you, the technology that lets us get that done, and the people, the engineers who set that up, is just mind-boggling to me. How something can be generated and consumed at almost the precise time, and knowing when to increase, decrease, and to avoid blackouts. It's amazing we don't have more, but
I've always thought that when I was in the legislature,
them.
this is one of these things you learn about, and sometimes some of my friends who are not in politics have always said, don't you wish you'd go back to days when you were blissfully unaware? And that is,
That's right.
that is sort of true, because you think, oh, like you just said, how do we not have blackouts all the time? It's so complicated and so big. But so if APS has a case, How does it not become unwieldy, given how many people might weigh in the process you described earlier?
Well, I'm not concerned about too many people weighing in. I'm concerned about too few people weighing in. And when I mentioned being an intervener, there is a lot of work to being an intervener. You have to, you have to file responses and so on, and you have to file them 13 copies, and you have to make sure you go to the meetings. So it has to be someone who's dedicated, someone who's got some knowledge. Potentially speaking for a group of people might be better, although, like I say, an individual can. But there are other ways. I mean, you don't have to be an intervener. Most people are not interveners. But when we have public comment session, people come and give their position and their opinions on it. And it can be a lot of people. They can do it, like I say, by email. If someone sends me an email, by the way, who doesn't understand, obviously, about the ex parte rule or anything like that, then I will take the email and I will get it docketed, so that everyone, like I said, everyone has to see what's going on.
So people watching don't have to feel like there's this onerous process. I don't even know what those words, it sounds complicated.
And obviously there is a way rate making is done. And I didn't want to get too much into that, but basically, and our staff puts that together, and we have engineers, we have accountants, we have those folks. The APS will say, this is what we think we need. RUCO, the Residential Utility Consumers Office, will come in and say, no, we don't think so, we think this is what they need. Our staff will say, well, this is what we think is more reasonable. And then other people might come in and give their own opinions as to whether they think we're on target or not. And then we sift through it. Maybe they'll have things on expense reports that we don't think belongs on ratepayers' bills. Expenses that are prudent, yes, we do end up having to put them in the mix and divide them amongst ratepayers. But sometimes people see APS or other, I don't mean to pick on APS, but other entities doing things, say, for the community, doing things with a group that is part of the city or something, and people say, is this or a charitable organization was what I was trying to think about. Is this something that I should be having to pay for, or is that something APS shareholders should pay for? So we look at those kind of things, whether this is, where that kind of thing belongs, and we might disallow some things. We'll look at salaries and say, this fits prudency with the way other utilities are and how they pay, or it doesn't, it's too much. And so we look at all those things. Sometimes bonuses and those kind of things seem to make sense, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're paid for by the shareholders.
Well, thank you, Brenda. I appreciate it. 28 years of knowledge in the arena. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us. It did go fast. And if you have any questions or comments, please call my office at 602-262-7445, or visit my website at phoenix.gov/district2. And we look forward to seeing you next time on The Issues.